You'll see on the screen a picture in a moment, and it is a rabbit. It's not an Easter bunny, but it is a valuable rabbit, I guess now. It says with the ad on eBay, it is old and needs to be restuffed. It comes as showing the pull string works, but it talks really fast and will need to be repaired. Priced accordingly. This chatty chum is going for $79.99 on eBay, or trying to be sold for $79.99 on eBay. And I remember having a chatty chum. My uncle would come over when I was little, and he would pull on the string of that bunny. It lost its carrot very early on. And the bunny would say, "What's up, Doc?" And he would talk as Elmer Fudd to it, and he'd talk back to the bunny and pull the string again. You never knew exactly which phrase was going to come out of Bugs' mouth. But I will confess, though I had the bunny, my cousin had the newer model, the plastic See and Say. You could know what was coming out of the mouth. You would turn, there was no mouth, but you'd turn the arrow and pull the string, and out would come, "The cow said moo." If it says moo, if you were pointing to the cow, or whatever other thing. Now, the interesting thing is, See and Says are only going for $16.99 on eBay from 1964. So in theory, if my cousin had saved his See and Say and I had saved my chatty chum would be worth more than his See and Say, though I always wanted his See and Say. 2,000 years ago, there used to be followers of Jesus walking on a road to the city of Emmaus. Whatever their Jesus or his words might have been worth in mint condition, they saw what had happened to Jesus on Good Friday just 3 days earlier. And they couldn't get it out of their minds. They had heard about the burial, and they couldn't get that out of their minds. They had heard about his body being gone, and that stuck in their minds more than the angel's words of "He is risen." Their Jesus, in their minds, needed more than some restuffing and some tender, loving care. Their Jesus had been killed and discarded. Their Jesus had been broken. And they were left alone with their grief. And they didn't quite know how to handle their grief. We never do, because there is no perfect way to handle grief. There is putting one foot in front of the other, and that's what they were doing as they walked on that road to Emmaus. They were walking dazed and mightily wounded. And if we pause for a moment, we realize we have seen their faces. We know their stories well. They are basically the ones who have heard life's phrases in the middle of ordinary days. Suddenly, the word comes, the most brutal of phrases. The biopsy confirmed it's cancer. It's metastasized. There's been a terrible accident. I want a divorce. Mom, I've been arrested and I'm calling from prison. The torrential rains and tornado-force winds have leveled the entire town. For the sake of the company, we are laying off 5,000 people. Please gather your things at the end of the day and turn in your keys and ID badge. I've had the privilege at times of walking with people in the midst of their struggles. But I've also had the privilege of walking with people in the midst of their struggles when suddenly their struggles have been transformed, or their understanding of the struggles have been transformed. I've had the privilege of hearing, and you have too, I bet, those Emmaus-type stories. I didn't see God in it at first, but then type stories. When people bear their pain to us, that is an honor and a privilege to hear their story. It's an opportunity that is God's gift to us, just to be there and listen. And some people say that people will keep telling their stories until they feel their story has been heard, truly understood. But I'm digressing. 2,000 years ago, just as today, Jesus was much closer to these followers than they ever imagined. This stranger on the road began to explain to them how it was God was in everything that had unfolded. In the good and in the tragedy, God was there. Another woman describes the loss of her brother, her best friend through life's ups and downs. She was not a churchgoer. And she struggled with the loss, not only missing him, but struggled with her faith, or what little faith she had. And then one morning she said, as I was drinking my cup of coffee, a bird, his favorite bird, a bird that wasn't known for even being in our area, came and landed on the windowsill and just sat there, or stood there. And I drank my coffee and I watched that bird, and I can't explain it, but as the bird flew off, it was like my burden had been lifted. It was like I knew life would go on, and I knew. Somehow I just knew that he was with God, and someday we would be reunited again. Everything changed at that moment. No man. A man who had walked with his wife through years and years of struggle with cancer, till finally he lost her. He was devastated, and yet her family surrounded him and kept saying to him over and over, "We appreciate so much how you stuck with her every day. The good days and the bad days, and how you loved her, and know you are always part of our family." And about the time a year had passed, something happened within him. And he can't explain it other than to say, suddenly I was grateful for every day I had with her, and I wouldn't change any of it for the world. And though I miss her, I know it's going to be okay, and I know I will be with her again. Stories go on and on and on. Turn the dial to time of loss, and there are those people who will tell the story of having seen that God's love conquers all. And you may have that kind of story to tell. Don't underestimate the power of that story told to another person. Don't underestimate that gift God has given you that can lift the spirit of someone else. But if you're still waiting for that story to come in your heart and in your life, don't give up. In God's time, the healing does happen. In God's time, hope is reborn. That is the story of Easter. That is the story of the Emmaus Road. As Jesus took bread and broke it, suddenly they recognized Jesus was with them. The healing was right there, as close as the bread they were about to share. They saw it. And the first thing they did is they began to say it, to tell their stories to one another. What if they hadn't told their stories? Shared their stories, and it is our privilege to be able to share our stories of hope, our stories of new life, our stories of how God carried us through, and how resurrection and new life has come into our darkest